Therefore, substitution occurred between shaker and table, a distance of 18 inches, in full view of 50 witnesses. Impossible, he smiled, unless the witnesses were distracted. From his waistcoat, Poirot produced a small brass projector lens. This was found in the ventilation grill, a magic lantern slide, painted with the Queen of Spades, eyes gouged out, projected onto the faro table at 12:01, precisely when the lights flickered. Every head turned. In that second, the poison die was swapped. Hastings gasped. "The ghost laughed from the grill." "Recorded," Poirot confirmed. "The gramophone in the cellar was wired to a speaker. A simple stage illusion." Madame Spirot's eyes blazed. "You accuse me of murder with parlor tricks?" "I accuse you of preparation. But the hand that placed the die—" He spun abruptly to Lady Evelyn. "Madame, your diamonds, may I?" Startled, she extended her wrist. Poirot unclasped a bracelet, black pearls interspersed with tiny ivory cubes. Dice, miniature, perfect, one with a hairline crack. "These are from Sir Reginald's personal set," Poirot said softly. "He wore one as a talisman. The others were kept in his study, locked. You had access." Lady Evelyn's poise shattered. He gave them to me. A joke." "A joke that killed him. You substituted the poisoned dye during the distraction, then returned to the powder room. Your alibi is the cloakroom girl, who was bribed by Victor Lang to lie about Madame Spirot's movements." Lang slumped. "She promised me the trust." Poirot held up a hand. "Patience, we are not finished." He crossed to the Anubis statue, pressed a hidden panel. A compartment opened, revealing a reel-to-reel tape recorder, cuttingly new technology, smuggled from Berlin. "The casino's sound system," Poirot explained, "records every table for dispute resolution. I had Japp retrieve the tape from 11:58 to 12:02. He threaded the reel, pressed play. Static, then Delia Frost's voice. 7 again. The gentleman wins. Cheers. Then, faint beneath the noise, a woman's whisper, "Now, Evelyn, the die with the crimson pip." Lady Evelyn's recorded gasp was unmistakable. The room erupted. Constables seized her arms. Madame Spirot laughed, a low, triumphant sound. Poirot raised a hand. "Silence! We have means, we have opportunity, but we lack motive unified. Lady Evelyn gains inheritance, yet the will leaves everything to a trust administered by Victor Lang. Lang gains control, yet he embezzled, and exposure loomed. Madame Spirot gains revenge, yet the curare vial bears her fingerprints alone. Delia Frost gains her job, yet she is Sir Reginald's illegitimate daughter, disinherited for miscounting chips that were never missing." He paused, letting the revelation settle like dust. 4 motives, 1 murder. The truth lies in the dice themselves. From his pocket, Poirot produced the 6 ivory dice, lined them on the roulette table. 5 pristine, 1 with the crimson smear. Observe, regulation weight, 2 ounces, yet this one— he placed it on a pocket scale borrowed from the cashier— is 1 grain light. The cavity held curare, but the wax seal is fresh, applied tonight. Who had access to wax? Delia Frost whispered, "The stage hands, for the magic lantern slides." Poirot nodded. And who supplied the lantern? The projectionist, paid by Victor Lang to create the ghost, but supplied with equipment by Madame Spirot. The wax is green, matching her costume feather. He turned to Spirot. "You prepared the die. Lady Evelyn substituted it. Lang created distraction. Delia provided timing, a perfect quartet, until greed fractured harmony." Madame Spirot lunged, clawing for the curare vial. Japp intercepted her. Poirot sighed. The house, mes amis, does not always win. Sometimes it is merely the banker who counts the dead. From the chandelier above, a single crystal detached, fell, and shattered on the parquet like a gunshot. In the silence that followed, the Anubis statue's painted eyes seemed to glow. Chapter 3. The Ghost of Table 7. The Ivory Casino after midnight was a different beast. The chandeliers had been dimmed to quarter light, their crystals catching stray glimmers from the street lamps outside and scattering them like frost across the gaming floor. The band was gone, the patrons banished. The only sounds were the creak of old wood, the occasional drip of a tap in the distant kitchens, and the low, almost sub-audible hum of the building itself, an exhalation of secrets held too long. Hercule Poirot stood alone at table 7. The green baize had been rolled back to reveal the mahogany beneath, scarred by decades of cigarette burns and spilled brandy. A single ivory die lay in the centre, the poisoned one, sealed now in a glass evidence jar. Poirot regarded it with the solemnity of a priest at an altar. Captain Hastings, stationed by the cashier cage with a police whistle and a look of heroic discomfort, whispered, "I say, Poirot, this is deuced eerie. Feels as though the whole place is watching us." "Precisely, mon ami. Casinos are built to watch. Every mirror, every grille, every gilded cherub with its cornucopia of plenty, tous sont des yeux." He tapped the evidence jar. "And tonight, the house itself will testify." Inspector Japp emerged from the service corridor, rubbing red eyes. Constables are posted at every exit. Projectionists in the cloakroom under guard. Still swearing, Lang only paid him to scare Carver, not kill him. Found this in the wine cellar, though. He held up a child's slate, the kind sold for 6pence in Woolworths. Chalked in a childish scrawl. Poirot's moustaches bristled. The hand is deliberate, large letters, uneven pressure, an adult imitating a child. But why? "Because someone wants us to believe in ghosts," Japp growled. "And I'm damned if I'll let a music hall spook make a fool of Scotland Yard." Poirot smiled thinly. "Then let us meet the ghost at the appointed hour." They waited. At 1:47 a.m., the temperature dropped perceptibly. Hastings's breath plumed in the air. From the ventilation grill above the roulette wheel came the faint rhythmic scrape of metal on metal. Slow, deliberate, like a blind man tapping with a cane. Poirot motioned silence. He glided to the foot of the grand staircase, where a potted palm cast a fringed shadow. Japp took position behind the statue of Anubis. Hastings, despite trembling knees, crouched beneath the faro table. At 1:59 the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. A woman's laugh, low and theatrical, drifted from the grill. The same laugh they had heard earlier, but now it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. At 2 cards exactly, the roulette wheel began to spin of its own accord. The ivory ball was not in the bowl. Yet the wheel turned, faster, faster, until the numbers blurred into a hypnotic band of red and black. From the grill descended a figure in white, veiled, floating 6 inches above the floor. It moved with the stately grace of a sleepwalker, arms outstretched, fingers trailing phosphorescent sparks. Hastings stifled a yelp. Japp's hand went to his truncheon. Poirot remained motionless, eyes fixed on the hem of the robe. Wet, dark at the edges. Someone had walked through liquid to reach the gaming floor. The ghost reached table 7, paused, and with deliberate ceremony arranged 6 ivory dice in a perfect circle. Each die landed with a soft click, pips upward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a straight. Then the figure raised its veil. Beneath was darkness, no face, only a void where features should be. A trick of the light or a mask of black silk. Before Poirot could step forward, the roulette wheel stopped abruptly on 0. The ghost bowed, arms sweeping the floor, and dissolved into a swirl of mist that smelled faintly of camphor and ozone. The lights blazed to full strength. The ghost was gone. The dice remained. Hastings scrambled out, face the colour of putty. Did you see its face? No, mon ami, because there was no face. Observe. Poirot knelt, touched the wet hemprint on the carpet. Water, mixed with glycerin for viscosity. Stage fog. The floating was wires. See the hook marks on the grill. He pointed to tiny scratches in the brass. The phosphorescence is radium paint, applied to gloves. A music hall illusion, nothing more. Japp kicked the roulette wheel. It spun lazily. But how did it start itself? Electromagnet beneath the table, triggered by a pocket watch mechanism. The same watch, I suspect, that timed the earlier distraction with the Queen of Spades. Poirot lifted the dice. 5 were regulation weight. The 6th, the one on the 6th position, was lighter by 2 grains. He held it to the light. Hairline crack glinted. Another poison die, Japp breathed. No, this one is hollow but empty. A decoy. The ghost plants fear, not death. Hastings mopped his brow. Then why go to all this trouble? To convince us the casino is haunted, and that Sir Reginald's death was supernatural. A perfect misdirection. They followed the wet prints. The trail led through the service door, down the kitchen stairs, and into the wine cellar. The gramophone record was gone, but a fresh reel of copper wire lay on the player. Voice recordings, the new German magnetophone technology. Poirot pocketed it. On the cellar floor, a child's shoe, white leather sole caked in flour. Size 3. Delia Frost's, Japp wondered. No, Delia wears a lady's 5. This belongs to a child, or someone wishing us to believe so. Back upstairs, Poirot examined the roulette wheel's undercarriage. Concealed beneath the 0 slot, a tiny brass lever connected to a silk thread that ran through the floorboards to the projectionist's booth. The ghost was puppetry, Poirot murmured, but who pulled the strings? At 2:37 a.m., the projectionist, name of Ernie Potts, was dragged in, trembling. I swear Mr. Lang only paid me to scare Sir Reginald. Said he'd settle debts if the governor got spooked into paying up. I never touched no poison. Poirot's voice was silk over steel. Describe the instructions. Written on a card, slipped under me door. Project the queen at 12:01. Spin the wheel at 2 go. Leave the dice. That's all. And the ghost costume? Already in the booth. White silk, wires, radium paint. Smelled of mothballs. Japp found the costume bundled behind the screen. A robe of fine muslin, hem soaked in glycerin water, a black silk mask with eye holes cut out. Inside the hem, stitched into the lining, a label, property of Madame Olga Spiro, the Veiled Oracle. Poirot's eyes gleamed. So, the hypnotist provides the spectacle, but who wrote the instructions? He produced the child's slate. Under ultraviolet light, a new yard toy, faint indentations appeared beneath the chalk message, writing from the previous sheet. Evelyn, substitute diet distraction. VL will create ghost. DF, time the roll. OS supplies poison. Trust divides equally. Burn this. 4 sets of initials. 4 conspirators. Hastings whistled. They were all in it together. No. Observe the handwriting. The E of Evelyn has a continental loop, Madame Spiro's hand. She forged the note, but someone else pressed hard enough to indent. Someone right-handed, unlike the suicide note. Japp scratched his head. So Spiro planned it, but execution required trust. And trust, mes amis, is the one thing murderers never possess. At 3:15 a.m., they searched Spiro's dressing room at the Palladium. She kept a permanent suite for late shows. Behind a false panel in the wardrobe, a curare, vial, 3/4 empty. A wax impression of Carver's talisman die. and a photograph. Sir Reginald, arm around a young croupier who was unmistakably Delia Frost, aged 16. On the back, in Carver's handwriting, Poirot's face softened for the first time. Ah, the missing piece. Sir Reginald disinherited Delia to shield her from his enemies, then tried to make amends with the trust. But the others discovered the relationship and used it. From the dressing-table drawer, a reel of copper wire, identical to the one in the cellar. Poirot played it on the magnetophone. Madame Spiro's voice, velvet and venom. "Reginald, you will hear the jazz crescendo. You will grasp the ivory die. You will feel the prick. You will sleep. And when you wake, the house will have won." Hypnotic suggestion, recorded weeks ago. Japp clenched his fists. "Enough to hang her." "Non, Inspecteur. Suggestion is not compulsion. We need the moment of substitution." At 3:45 a.m., the casino's night porter found something wedged beneath Table 7's rail. A lady's kid glove, emerald green, monogrammed EC inside, a single ivory die. Regulation weight, but with a crimson wax seal over the number 1 pip. Poirot held it to the light. Lady Evelyn's glove, the die she intended to substitute, but in the distraction she dropped it. The ghost's decoy die was already in place. He lined up the evidence on the baize. Poisoned die used, decoy die, hollow empty, dropped die, wax-sealed, unused. Talisman die, from Carver's neck containing the real suicide note, not the forged one. 4 dice, Poirot said softly. 4 lies. The truth is in the 5th. He produced the talisman die, unscrewed the platinum cap. The rolled paper inside was not the forged suicide note, but a codicil to Carver's will, dated yesterday. "All to my daughter Delia Frost, legitimated this day. Witnesses A. Hastings, Dr. J. Hawthorne." Hastings gaped. "But I never—" "You did, mon ami. At 11:15 p.m., when Carver asked you to witness a betting slip. You signed without reading, a common habit of the honest." The casino clock struck 4. From the ventilation grill came a final sound. Not laughter, but a child's sob, quickly stifled. Poirot looked up. The ghost has a conscience after all. Chapter 4. The Poisoned Die. The morgue at St. Mary's Hospital smelled of carbolic, wet wool, and the particular silence that gathers around the newly dead. At 5:17 a.m., the gas lamps still burned. The night porter dozed over a cup of cocoa gone cold. In the centre of the tiled room, beneath a sheet starched to the stiffness of a bishop's collar, lay Sir Reginald Carver. Hercule Poirot entered without ceremony, removing his Homburg and placing it on a hook beside a row of specimen jars. Dr. Lionel Hawthorne, pathologist, young, earnest, and faintly green from lack of sleep, lifted the sheet. "Curare," he confirmed before Poirot spoke. "South American, refined. Enough in the pinprick on the right thumb to stop an elephant. Death in 92 seconds. Timed it from the casino clock. No other marks. No alcohol in the stomach, surprisingly. He was sober when he died." Poirot's eyes flicked to the corpse's hand. The thumb showed a crescent abrasion, no larger than a punctuation mark. Around it, the skin was livid. Veins collapsed like empty hoses. "Observe, Docteur, the scratch is horizontal. Yet Sir Reginald rolled the dice with a downward flick of the wrist. How does a die cut sideways?" Hawthorne frowned. "The die must have been pressed against the flesh, deliberately. Or the flesh pressed to the die." Poirot produced the evidence jar. Inside, the poisoned die gleamed like a tiny moon. "May I?" He unscrewed the jar, tipped the die onto a porcelain dish. Under the magnifying lens, a hairline crack along the edge of the number 4 pip, sealed with crimson wax. Within the crack, a steel pin no longer than a dressmaker's. its tip blackened with dried poison. Hawthorne whistled. A hypodermic needle filed down. The wax was soft. Body heat melted it just enough for the pin to prick when he squeezed. Poirot nodded. The killer relied on Sir Reginald's habit. He always clenched the dice before rolling, to feel the luck, he told the croupier. A superstition fatal. From his waistcoat he drew a second jar. Inside, the decoy die from the ghost's 2 a.m. performance. Hollow, empty, harmless. Compare. The ghost plants fear. The real killer plants death. 2 dice, 2 hands. Hawthorne scraped wax from the poisoned die. Beeswax, tinted with carmine. Theatrical supply, and this, he held a flake to the light. Emerald dust. Ground glass. Dyed. Matches the feather in Spiro's costume. Poirot's moustaches curled with satisfaction. The die was prepared in advance, but when? They adjourned to the hospital's microscopic laboratory. Poirot laid out the dice like a miser counting coins. The Tisman die, from Carver's neck, containing codicil. The poisoned die, used wax-sealed pinprick. The decoy die, hollow ghosts. The dropped die, Lady Evelyn's glove, wax-sealed, unused. A 5th die, recovered from the shaker, pristine, untouched. 5 dice from the shaker, Poy Coleman said. But Sir Reginald rolled 6. Where is the 6th? Hawthorne produced a small envelope. Found wedged beneath the table rail. It rolled into the gutter during the commotion. The missing die. Ivory, regulation weight. But one face bore a microscopic engraving. A tiny scarab beetle. Carver's personal mark, Hawthorne explained. He had his ivory sets custom carved in Cairo, 1924. This is from his original set, the one he wore as a talisman before giving it to Delia. Poirot turned the die beneath the lens, and here, microscopic scratch on the scarab's wing, fresh, made by a diamond. He placed a loop over Lady Evelyn's confiscated bracelet. One miniature die, cracked, showed a diamond chip embedded in the wax. Lady Evelyn attempted the substitution, Poirot murmured. But in the distraction of the Queen of Spades, she dropped her die. The poisoned one, already in the shaker, was rolled by accident. Hawthorne paled. You mean the murder was improvised? No. Planned to the second, but with contingency. The killer prepared multiple dice, knowing Sir Reginald's superstition would force him to use his own shaker. At 6:05 a.m., they returned to the casino. The gaming floor was a crime scene now. Ropes, chalk marks, constables sipping tea from enamel mugs. Poirot went straight to the dice shaker. Silver, monogrammed RC. Inside, the felt lining was stained with a faint ring of crimson. He scraped the stain with a scalpel. Wax again, and beneath it, a second pinprick, empty. The shaker itself was poisoned, he announced. A backup. If the die failed, the lining would prick the fingers when he scooped. Japp arrived yawning. Spiro's alibi's cracked. Cloakroom girl admits she was paid £5 to say Spiro never left the balcony. And Langs confessed to the embezzlement, says he only wanted to scare Carver into settling debts, never meant murder. Poirot waved a hand. Lang is the distraction, nothing more. The Queen of Spades, the ghost, the rigged wheel, all his toys, but the poison is Spiro's. He led them to the Palladium Theatre, where Madame Spiro's dressing room smelled of patchouli and fear. The hypnotist herself was gone. Her maid claimed she'd taken a taxi to Waterloo at 4:30 a.m., bound for Southampton and the Urs Majestic. But the room told stories. On the dressing table, a jeweller's loop, a pot of carmine wax, a packet of dressmaker's pins. In the wastebasket, a torn sheet of music hall notepaper. Poirot pocketed it. The conspiracy in writing, but observe, the paper is Palladium stationery, watermarked. Spiro wrote it here, not at the casino. Behind the mirror, a false panel. Inside, a leather case containing 6 ivory dice, Carver Bender's original Cairo set, each engraved with the scarab. One was missing its number 4 pip, replaced with a steel pin. Jap whistled. She stole the whole set. None borrowed. Sir Reginald kept them in his office safe. Who had access? Lang, Jap said, as secretary. Exactament. Lang provided the dice. Spiro prepared them. Lady Evelyn was to substitute. Delia to time the roll. But greed, always greed, fractured the plan. At 7:12 a.m., they interviewed Delia Frost in the casino's office, now stripped of its Egyptian glamour and reeking of instant coffee. The croupier sat hunched, eyes red, clutching a cup that rattled against her teeth. "Sir Reginald was my father," she whispered. "He acknowledged me last week, said the trust would make me legitimate. Then Lang found out, threatened, to expose the books unless I helped frame Spiro." Poirot's voice was gentle. "You called the final point. You saw the dice leave the shaker. Was the poisoned one among them?" Delia shook her head. I don't know. It all happened so fast. The lights flickered. The Queen appeared. Sir Reginald laughed, then grabbed his throat. Poirot produced the dropped die from Lady Evelyn's glove. "This one has your fingerprint in the wax, mademoiselle. You sealed it." She stared, horrified. "Madame Spiro gave me the wax. Said it was for luck. You thought you were part of a prank, but the prank had a pin." At 7:45 a.m., Poirot reconstructed the timeline on the chalkboard once used for betting odds. 11:30. Carver sits, uses personal shaker. 11:45. Lady Evelyn passes, drops poisoned die into shaker, plan A. 11:47. Lang brushes table, creates distraction, checks die is in place. 12:01. Queen of spades projected, lights flicker, Evelyn panics, drops backup die, recovered from glove. 12:02. Carver rolls, poisoned die, already in shaker from 11:45, pricks thumb. 12:30. Death. "But the ghost at 2 a.m.? J11 asked. "Plan B," Poirot said. "If Carver survived the roll, the ghost would plant the decoy die, convince him the casino was cursed, drive him to suicide. The child's shoe, the slate, Delia's touches to make it personal." He turned to Delia. "You left the shoe in the cellar. Why?" She sobbed. "To warn him. I thought if he saw a child's ghost, he'd leave the tables. I didn't know about the poison." Poirot's eyes softened. "You are the only innocent, mademoiselle. Your father died clutching the talisman he meant for you." At 8:30 a.m., they arrested Lady Evelyn at her Mayfair flat. She was packing for Biarritz, furs strewn like battle casualties. "You substituted the die," Poirot said. She laughed, brittle. "Prove it." He laid the glove on the table. Inside, the dropped die. Her fingerprint in wax, diamond chip embedded. "And the codicil," he continued. "Your husband changed it yesterday. Everything to Delia. You knew by 11 p.m. Lang showed you the draft. You had 1 hour to act." She lunged for the fireplace, but Jap was faster. At 9:05 a.m., Victor Lang was taken from the casino office, still clutching his ledger. "I only wanted the trust," he babbled. "Spiro said we'd split it 4 ways." Poirot regarded him with contempt. "You provided the dice, the distraction, the forged suicide note, but the poison was Spiro's. She played you all." At 9:30 a.m., a telegram arrived from Southampton. Poirot folded it neatly. "She thinks the ocean will hide her, but the little grey cells, mes amis, cross water as easily as carpet." He turned to the evidence table. 6 dice now, 5 ivory, 1 steel-hearted. "The poisoned die," he said, "is the only honest thing in this affair. It did exactly what it was made to do." From the casino's ventilation system came a final sound. A single ivory die, rolling across metal, clicking to rest on an unseen table. Chapter 5. The Ledger of Lies. The Ivory Casino's office had once been Sir Reginald Carver's sanctum. Mahogany panels, a partner's desk the size of a billiard table, and a portrait of the man himself in boxing pose, fists raised against the world. Now it looked like a battlefield after the ceasefire. Papers avalanched across the carpet. An overturned inkwell bled indigo across a Persian rug. The safe door yawned open, its combination lock spinning like a drunk compass. Hercule Poirot stood in the centre, gloved hands clasped behind his back, surveying the chaos with the calm of a general who has already won. Inspector Japp, red-eyed and rumpled, kicked at a pile of ledgers. Lang's been cooking the books for 18 months. If Carver had lived another week, the auditors would have had him in the dock. Poirot lifted a single sheet from the wreckage. Carver's private ledger, hand-bound in red morocco, the pages dense with columns of figures and cryptic initials. He laid it on the desk beneath the green banker's lamp and began to turn the pages with the reverence of a priest opening a reliquary. Observe, Inspecteur, the debts are not to banks, but to individuals. VL, 12,000, DF, 5,000, OS, 30,000, marked silence. And here he tapped a fresh entry, ink still glossy. EC, 200,000, crossed out in red. The inheritance Lady Evelyn believed was hers. Captain Hastings, perched on the edge of a leather club chair, whistled. 200,000! No wonder she was packing for Biarritz. Exactement. But the codicil witnessed by you, mon ami, changes everything. Delia Frost inherits. Lady Evelyn is left with diamonds and debts. Japp scratched his chin. So Evelyn kills to protect her fortune. Lang kills to hide embezzlement. Spiro kills for revenge. Delia? What does Delia kill for? Poirot's eyes gleamed. That, Inspector, is the question that will break the circle. He opened the safe. Inside, bundles of share certificates, a revolver still in its oilskin, and a slim dossier labelled Confidential, Family. Poirot slit the wax seal. Photographs spilled out. The first, Sir Reginald, younger, arm around a dark-haired woman in a nurse's uniform, White Russian Red Cross, 1919. On the back, Olga Simonova, Petrograd. The second, the same woman, older, in stage makeup, Madame Olga Spiro, the Veiled Oracle. The third, a birth certificate, issued Odessa, 1917. Child Delia Ivanovna Simonova. Father, unknown. Mother, Olga Simonova. Hastings gasped. Delia is Spiro's daughter. Non, mon ami. Read the margin note in Carver's hand. Acknowledged 1936, legitimated per codicil. Delia is Carver's daughter, by Olga Simonova, before she became Spiro. The greatest secret of all. Japp swore softly. So Spiro financed her own child's ruin? Or thought she did? Carver kept the truth from both. He paid Spiro 30,000 for silence. About the child, about the affair. When he changed the will to favour Delia, Spiro believed she was being robbed twice over. Poirot returned to the ledger. A final page, tucked inside the back cover, was written in a hurried scrawl. 4 conspirators, Poirot murmured. Each with a key to the safe. Each with a motive to destroy the codicil, but only one with access to curare. At 10:15 a.m., they brought Delia Frost to the office. She had changed into a plain black dress. Her croupier's poise was gone, replaced by the brittle exhaustion of a girl who has cried herself empty. Poirot offered her a chair. Mademoiselle, your mother is Madame Spiro. Your father was Sir Reginald. You knew. Delia's lips trembled. He told me last week. Said he'd make it right. Then Lang showed me the ledger. Said if the codicil stood, I'd be ruined by association. He offered me 5,000 to help frame Spiro. And you agreed. I thought it was just a prank. The ghost, the rigged wheel. I didn't know about the poison. Poirot produced the child's shoe from the cellar. You left this as a warning? She nodded. I wanted him to leave the tables. I thought if he believed the casino was cursed. Your heart was kinder than your hands, mademoiselle. You sealed the wax on the dropped die. Your fingerprint is in the carmine. Delia buried her face in her hands. At 10:45 a.m., Victor Lang was escorted in, wrists cuffed, spectacles askew. He collapsed into a chair and began talking before anyone asked. Spiro masterminded it. She said if Carver died before the codicil was filed, the trust would default to equal shares. I'd control the books, skim enough to cover the embezzlement. Evelyn wanted the inheritance. Delia wanted legitimacy. Spiro wanted revenge. We all signed the note. He fumbled in his pocket, produced a crumpled sheet, palladium stationery, the same as the one in Spiro's wastebasket. Operation Ivory Ghost. Die and shaker by 11:45. Distraction 12:01. Ghost 2. Shushed if needed. Burn. 4 signatures. VL, EC, OS, DF. Jap pounced. You wrote the instructions for the projectionist. Lang nodded miserably. Spiro gave me the dice. Said they were hollow, for the ghost trick. I didn't know one was poisoned. Poirot's voice cut like a scalpel. You provided the original set from the safe. Spiro prepared them, but who substituted the poisoned die into the shaker? Lang pointed a shaking finger at the door. Evelyn, she had the bracelet, miniature dice, said it would be poetic. At 11:10 a.m., Lady Evelyn was brought from the cells, wrists bound with silk scarves. She had refused steel. Her diamonds were gone. Her eyes were bright with fury. You little Belgian toad, she spat. You think you've won? The will is worthless, without Carver's signature on the codicil, and Hastings signed a betting slip. Poirot smiled. Captain Hastings is many things, madame, but not a fool. The betting slip was on Carver's personal stationery, watermarked, dated, and witnessed by Dr. Hawthorne at 11:15 p.m. It is filed with Carver's solicitor. Your husband anticipated treachery. He laid the codicil on the desk. Carver's bold signature, Hastings's neat one, Hawthorne's spidery scrawl. Lady Evelyn lunged for it. Jap restrained her. You substituted the die, Poirot continued, but in the distraction of the Queen of Spades, you dropped your backup. The poisoned die, already in the shaker from 11:45, was rolled by fate. Your conspiracy killed the wrong man at the wrong time. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Prove I touched the shaker. Poirot produced the silver shaker, now dusted with fingerprint powder. A single print on the lid, Lady Evelyn's right thumb, in carmine wax. And the glove, he added, monogrammed EC, found beneath table 7. The dropped die inside has your diamond chip embedded. Her defiance cracked. Spiro said it would be clean. Hypnotic suggestion. He'd clutch the die, prick himself, collapse. No fingerprints, no weapon, but the fool rolled early. At 11:40 a.m., the final piece arrived by police motorcycle. A second telegram from Southampton. Poirot folded the telegram. She suspected betrayal. The 4 conspirators turned on each other the moment Carver died. Spiro fled with the curare vial, evidence that would hang them all. He turned to Delia. Your mother did not board the ship. She is in London, watching, waiting to see who survives. Delia whispered, She'll kill again. Non, mademoiselle, she will try, but Hercule Poirot does not lose a fox twice. At noon, the office safe yielded one last secret. Behind the share certificates, a small velvet pouch. Inside, 6 ivory dice, Carver's original Cairo set, each engraved with the scarab. One was missing. Poirot lined them up. The poisoned die was number 4, the dropped die was number 1, the decoy was number 6, the talisman was number 3. The shaker held numbers 2 and 5, all accounted for, except the real number 4. He opened the pouch again. Tucked in the lining, a 7th die, smaller, unmarked, hollow. Inside, a rolled slip of paper. If I die, trust no one. The house always wins. R.C. Hastings stared. He knew. He suspected. The 7th die was his insurance, hidden in the pouch only he knew existed. He carried it in his pocket, not the talisman. The talisman was for Delia. Poirot pocketed the 7th die. The ledger of lies is closed, but the game, mes amis, is not. From the corridor came the sound of a woman's laugh. Low, theatrical, echoing down the marble staircase. Chapter 6. Midnight at the roulette wheel. The Ivory Casino reopened at 11 p.m. on the Lord Mayor's orders. Let the inquest be public. Let London see justice done. By 11:30, the gaming floor was a crucible of silk hats, cigarette smoke, and flash bulbs. Reporters from the Express, the Mail, and the Picture Post jostled with peers of the realm. A Pathé newsreel camera whirred like an angry hornet. The roulette wheel, cleaned, polished, and now ringed by constables, gleamed beneath a single spotlight. Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, a small, immaculate figure in midnight blue evening dress, the 7th die from Carver's pouch, turning between his gloved fingers like a miniature planet. Captain Hastings, resplendent in white tie, and the expression of a man who has misplaced his invitation, whispered, "I say, Poirot, isn't this a bit theatrical? The Yard's already got confessions from Evelyn, Lang, and Delia." Confessions are like roulette bets, mon ami, placed in haste, regretted at leisure. Tonight we spin the wheel for truth. Inspector Japp, stationed by the cashier cage with a dozen plainclothesmen, barked into a megaphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, by order of the coroner, the casino is now a court of inquiry. No one leaves until the wheel stops." At 11:45 the suspects were marched in under guard. Lady Evelyn Carver, wrists in silk cuffs, diamonds replaced by a single black pearl of defiance. Victor Lang, spectacles cracked, ledger confiscated, blinking like a mole in sunlight. Delia Frost, pale but composed, wearing the plain black dress of a mourner. Madame Olga Spiro, empty chair. A constable placed a photograph on the seat. Spiro in emerald silk, veil lifted, eyes blazing. Poirot addressed the room. "Mesdames et messieurs, tonight we reconstruct the crime. The wheel will spin, the dice will roll, and the house," he smiled, "will pay its debts." At 11:58, the lights dimmed to a whisper. The band, replaced by a gramophone, struck up the final chorus of Sweet Georgia Brown, exactly as it had played the night Carver died. The roulette wheel began to turn, though no hand touched it. Hastings gulped. "Electromagnet again?" "Non. Observe." Poirot nodded to a constable, who flicked a switch. The wheel slowed, revealing a new mechanism. A clockwork motor, hidden beneath the 0 slot, wound tight at 11:30. At 11:59, the gramophone needle lifted. Silence fell, thick as velvet. Poirot raised his voice. "At this hour, Sir Reginald sat here." He placed a tailor's dummy in Carver's chair, dressed in the dead man's dinner jacket. He rolled 6 dice from his personal shaker. A croupier, Delia Frost under guard, stepped forward. She opened the silver shaker, poured 6 ivory dice onto the baize. They bounced, settled, 6 to 6, 6, 6, 6 to 6. The crowd gasped. "Impossible," Japp muttered. "Prepared," Poirot corrected. "Weighted dice, swapped by Lang at 11:47. The originals are in evidence, but tonight we use the real set." He produced Carver's Cairo dice, each engraved, with the scarab. 1, the poisoned die, was sealed in glass. He placed the remaining 5 in the shaker, added the 7th die from the pouch. 6 dice again, but one is different. At 12 by midnight, the lights died entirely. A single spotlight hit the wheel. The gramophone crackled. Then Madame Spirot's voice recorded velvet and venom. "Reginald, grasp the ivory die. Feel the prick. Sleep." The spotlight flickered. On the far wall, the Queen of Spades appeared. Eyes gouged, blood dripping in projection. Lady Evelyn screamed. Lang tried to bolt. Constables pinned him. Poirot's voice cut through the dark. "Now, the substitution!" A figure in emerald silk glided from the service door. Spiro, veil discarded, face painted white like a kabuki demon. In her hand, a replica shaker. She reached the table in 3 silent steps, swapped the shakers in the strobing light. The spotlight died. When it flared again, Spiro was gone. The dummy sat rigid, one hand frozen mid-clutch. Poirot lifted the new shaker. Inside, 6 dice, one with a crimson wax seal. "The poisoned die," he announced. "Spiro returned it tonight, her final performance." Japp lunged for the service door. Constables followed. Poirot continued, calm, but the wheel has one more spin. He placed the 7th die, the unmarked one from the pouch, on the roulette layout, directly over 0. This die contains Sir Reginald's true message, not the forged suicide note, but a warning. He spun the wheel. The die rattled, bounced, settled on black 13. The crowd held its breath. Poirot unscrewed the die. Inside, a tightly rolled strip of celluloid, motion picture film. He held it to the spotlight. Frames flickered. Spiro in her dressing room, preparing the poisoned die. Lang waiting the roulette wheel. Lady Evelyn sealing wax with her diamond bracelet. Delia writing the child's slate. Carver installed a concealed camera, Poirot explained. Operated by a foot pedal beneath the table. He suspected betrayal. The film was developed this morning by the Yard's new darkroom. Hastings stared. "He filmed his own murder?" "No. He filmed the conspiracy. The actual poisoning was luck. Bad luck for him, good luck for us." At 12:07, the service door burst open. Japp dragged in Spiro, struggling, a constable on each arm. Her white makeup was streaked with sweat, the emerald gown torn at the hem. "You meddling dwarf," she hissed. "The house always wins." Poirot regarded her with pity. "Madame, the house is bankrupt. Your daughter inherits. Your lovers are in cuffs. Your poison is in evidence." He turned to the dummy, lifted its rigid hand. The thumb showed a fresh pinprick. Spiro had pricked it with the replica die during the blackout. "A demonstration," Poirot said. "Curare acts in 90 seconds. Watch." He counted softly. 1, 2, 3. At 92, the dummy's head lolled forward. A ripple of horror swept the room. Spiro laughed. Wild, broken. "You prove nothing. Hypnotic suggestion is not murder." Poirot produced the 7th die's celluloid strip. "But substitution is. Frame 12. Your hand places the poisoned die in the shaker at 11:45. Frame 24. You retrieve it after death, hiding it in your gown. Frame 36. You return tonight to plant it again. Why?" He held up a second strip, developed from the casino's sound system tape. "Your voice, recorded at 11:43. If he survives the roll, the ghost will finish him at 2 fach. The poisoned die stays with me until then." Spiro lunged. Japp twisted her arm. Poirot faced the crowd. The conspiracy in 4 acts. Preparation, Spiro poisons the die, using curare bought in Soho under the name Stage Blood. Substitution, Lady Evelyn places it in the shaker at 11:45. Distraction, Lang projects the Queen of Spades at 12:01. Insurance, if all fails, the ghost plants fear at 2-0, driving Carver to suicide with the same die. But Sir Reginald's camera captured Act 1. His codicil destroyed Act 4. And Hercule Poirot, he bowed, directed the encore. At 12:15, The wheel stopped spinning. The 7th die lay on 0, cracked open like an egg. Poirot lifted the final frame of celluloid. Spiro, alone in her dressing room, writing on the child's slate, "The ghost walks at 2 a.m. Beneath, in Carver's hand, forgive her. She is my daughter too." Delia Frost sobbed, shoulders shaking. Spiro's defiance crumbled. He promised me Monte Carlo, a new life, then cast me aside for a nurse's bastard. Poirot's voice was soft. You poisoned the father to punish the daughter, but the daughter survives, and the house, he gestured to the silent tables, is closed forever. At 12:20, the newsreel camera whirred to life. Flashbulbs popped. Spiro was led away, emerald silk trailing like a funeral shroud. Lady Evelyn followed, head high, pearls clicking like rosary beads. Lang shuffled behind, muttering figures that no longer mattered. Delia remained at the wheel, tracing the scarab on the 7th die with a trembling finger. Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder. "Your father's last roll was for you, mademoiselle. The house paid its debt." From the ventilation grill above, a final ivory die dropped. Click, 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 landing on 0. The wheel did not move. Chapter 7. The Croupier's Confession. The Ivory Casino at 3:00 a.m. was a mausoleum of velvet and regret. The chandeliers were dark. Only the green banker's lamp in Sir Reginald's office still burned, throwing a cone of light over the roulette wheel that had been carried in from the gaming floor and placed atop the partner's desk like a sacrificial altar. 6 ivory dice, Carver's Cairo set, lay in a perfect circle around the number 0. The 7th die, cracked open, rested beside the celluloid strip that had damned them all. Hercule Poirot stood, alone with Delia Frost. The constables had been dismissed. Japp and Hastings waited in the corridor, under strict orders to admit no one. The girl sat on the edge of Carver's chair, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the wheel as though it might still spin and grant absolution. Poirot spoke first, his voice soft, almost paternal. "Mademoiselle, the others have confessed their parts. Lady Evelyn admits the substitution. Lang admits the distraction. Madame Spiro admits the poison. But you called the point. You saw the dice leave the shaker. Tell me what you saw." Delia's breath hitched. "I saw my father's hand, the way he always rolled, thumb and forefinger, a little twist, like he was coaxing the luck. The dice spilled out, 6 ivory cubes, scarabs glinting. One had a crimson smear. He laughed, said it was blood from a paper cut. Then he clutched his throat." Poirot circled the desk, patent leather shoes silent on the rug. "The crimson smear. Was it on the number 4 pip?" She nodded. "Yes. I remember because the 4 was cracked. I'd seen it before. When he let me hold the set as a child, he said the crack was from Cairo. A camel kicked the table." Poirot lifted the poisoned die from its glass jar. The crack along the 4 pip was hairline, sealed with carmine wax. "This crack was made in London, mademoiselle, with a diamond. Your fingerprint is in the wax." Delia's hands flew to her mouth. I sealed the decoy die, not this one. Madame Spiro gave me the wax, said it was for the ghost trick, I thought. You thought you were helping a prank, but the prank had a pin." He placed the decoy die, hollow, empty, beside the poisoned one. 2 dice, prepared identically, one for death, one for fear. You sealed both. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't know, I swear." Poirot's eyes softened. "I believe you. But belief is not evidence. The jury will ask why you wrote the child's slate, why you left the shoe in the cellar." Delia reached into her pocket, drew out a small white leather shoe, size 3, flour still caked on the sole. "This was mine. When I was 6, Father kept it in his safe. I took it last week after he told me the truth. I wanted him to see it, to remember." She turned the shoe over. Inside, stitched in faded red thread, D.I.S., Petrograd, 1917. "Delia Ivanovna Simonova," Poirot murmured. "Your mother's name before she became Spiro." Delia nodded. "He said he'd send me to school, make me legitimate. Then Lang showed me the ledger, said if the codicil stood, I'd be ruined by association. He offered 5,000 to help frame Spiro. I thought if I warned Father with the shoe, he'd leave the tables. I didn't know about the poison." Poirot opened the safe, removed the dossier marked "Confidential Family." He laid the birth certificate beside the shoe. "Your father acknowledged you the day he died. The codicil was his. Last act. You are the heiress, mademoiselle. But heiress to what? A casino drowning in debt, a mother in chains, a legacy of lies." Delia's voice broke. "I never wanted the money. I wanted him." At 3:15 a.m., Poirot summoned the others. Lady Evelyn entered first, wrists freed but flanked by constables, her black lace gown torn at the hem. Victor Lang shuffled behind, spectacles mended with tape, ledger clutched like a hymnal. Madame Spiro was last, emerald silk replaced by prison grey, veil gone, face stripped of paint and pride. Poirot addressed them from behind the desk. "The conspiracy is complete, but one thread remains. Who forged the suicide note?" Lang pointed at Spiro. "She dictated it, left-handed like the slope." Spiro's laugh was bitter. "And you wrote it, little clerk." Your trembling hand pressed the indentations into the palladium stationery. Poirot produced the child's slate. Under ultraviolet light, the indentations glowed. "Evelyn, substitute die at distraction. VL will create ghost. DF time the roll. OS supplies poison. Trust divides equally. Burn this." "4 hands," Poirot said, but only one pressed hard enough to mark the slate beneath. "Observe the pressure on the D of Delia's initial. The heaviest stroke. She wrote the note, under duress." Delia sobbed. "Lang held the pen. Spiro dictated. Evelyn watched. I thought it was for the ghost trick." Lady Evelyn's voice was ice. "You thought wrong, you little fool. We needed a suicide to invalidate the codicil. Your father's death was inconveniently public." Poirot turned to Spiro. "And you, madame? You supplied the curare, the dice, the hypnotic recordings. But why return tonight to plant the poisoned die again?" Spiro's eyes blazed. "To finish it. If the dummy had rolled, the poison would have been found in the shaker. Proof the death was accident, not murder. The trust would divide. Delia would take her share. I would be free." Poirot shook his head. "You would be hanged. The celluloid strip shows you placing the die at 11:45. The sound tape records your whisper to Evelyn. The wax bears your emerald dust." He opened a drawer, removed a small glass vial. "Curare, 3/4 empty. Purchased in Soho, 14th October, under the name Olga Simonova. The chemist remembers the veil." Spiro lunged for the vial. Jap intercepted her. At 3:30 a.m., Poirot reconstructed the final timeline on the roulette wheel itself, using the dice as markers. "But the encore failed," Poirot said, "because Sir Reginald's camera never stopped rolling. The film was in the 7th die. His pocket, not the talisman. He knew one of you would search the body." He turned to Delia. "You sealed the wax on both the poisoned die and the decoy. Your fingerprint is on the number 4 pip. But the pinprick was made after you sealed it, by Spiro, in her dressing room at 11:30. Delia whispered, "I thought the wax was for luck." Poirot's voice was gentle. "You were the only one who wanted luck, not money. That is why you are free." He nodded to Jap. The constables released Delia's arms. Lady Evelyn sneered. "She'll hang with the rest of us." "No, madame. Accessory to fraud, perhaps, but not to murder. The poison was Spiro's. The substitution was yours. The distraction was Lang's. Delia's crime was love." At 3:45 a.m., the office safe yielded one final secret. Behind the false back, a reel of copper wire, identical to the one in Spiro's dressing room. Poirot played it on the magnetophone. Carver's voice, faint, recorded the day he died. "If you hear this, I am gone. The house is rotten. Trust no one. Delia, forgive me. The 7th die is in my pocket. Use it." The reel clicked to silence. Spiro's face crumpled. He knew, all along. Poirot closed the safe. He knew enough to die with the truth in his pocket. The rest was noise. At 4 a.m., the roulette wheel was carried out. The dice were bagged, tagged, sealed. The office was locked. Delia stood alone in the gaming floor, beneath the darkened chandeliers. She placed the child's shoe on table 7, beside the chalk outline of her father's body. Poirot watched from the doorway. "The house always wins, mademoiselle, but tonight the house is yours." From the ventilation grill above, a single ivory die dropped. Click, 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 landing on the shoe. It showed 1 pip. Chapter 8. The Transatlantic Chase. The SS Majestic cut through the English Channel like a silver blade, her 4 funnels belching white against a dawn sky the colour of gunmetal. At 6:30 a.m., on 24 October 1936, the great liner was already 2 hours out of Southampton, bound for New York with a cargo of millionaires, film stars, and one woman who believed the Atlantic could wash away murder. Hercule Poirot stood on the quayside at Waterloo Station. Homburg had clamped against the wind, watching the departure board click over to on time. In his pocket, the 7th die, the celluloid strip, and a cable from the Cunard line confirming cabin 12 first class, booked in the name Mrs. Reginald Carver. A forgery so bold it had fooled even the purser. Captain Hastings, pink and breathless, arrived with 2 Scotland Yard men in plain clothes. "Poirot! The Yard's chartered a seaplane from Imperial Airways. We can be at Cherbourg by 8. Board when the Majestic docks for the French mails. But Spiro's clever. She'll have a disguise, false papers. No, mon ami, Madame Spiro is not on the ship." Hastings gaped. "But the trunk, the veil, the passport." "Decoys, observe." Poirot produced a second cable, handed over by a breathless runner. Inspector Japp, arriving with the morning editions, snorted. "She's still in London, hiding in plain sight, I'll wager." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Exactement. The chase is not across water, but through mirrors. She wishes us to follow the ghost ship while she vanishes into the city." At 7:15 a.m., they returned to the Ivory Casino. The gaming floor was cordoned off, but the service corridors still smelled of beeswax and yesterday's cigars. Poirot led them to the projectionist's booth above the roulette tables. A narrow eyrie reached by a spiral stair. Inside, the magic lantern, the Queen of Spades slide, and a fresh reel of copper wire on the magnetophone. Poirot threaded it. Spiro's voice, recorded at 4 a.m. "If they follow the ship, I am free. If they stay, the casino burns at noon. The evidence with it. The house always wins." Hastings paled. "She's going to torch the place." Poirot was already moving. "The casino is insured for $500,000. Arson erases debts, destroys evidence, and leaves Delia with ashes. We have 4 hours." They searched the building room by room. In the wine cellar, a 5-gallon drum of paraffin, a fuse of cotton wadding soaked in turpentine, and a clockwork timer set for 11:55 a.m., the exact minute Carver died. Japp disabled the timer with shaking hands. "She's mad. Desperate. The curare vial is gone, her only link to the poison. She needs the casino destroyed before the inquest. At 8 a.m., they raided Spiro's flat in Bloomsbury. The concierge, bribed with a 10-shilling note, admitted them. The rooms were stripped, wardrobe empty, dressing table bare, but the air still held patchouli and fear. In the bathtub, a puddle of emerald silk dissolved in acid. The gown from the midnight reconstruction, destroyed to erase fibres. Under the floorboards, a locked tin box. Poirot picked it with a hatpin. Inside, the missing curare vial, now empty, a one-way railway ticket to Glasgow, and a photograph, Spiro, Carver, and a dark-haired child on a Petrograd balcony, 1917. On the back, in Spiro's hand, "We three against the world." Now, only one. Poirot pocketed the photograph. She runs north, Glasgow to Belfast, then a tramp steamer to anywhere, but she cannot leave without the final act. At 9:30 a.m., a tip came from the Palladium Theatre. The cleaning woman had found a note pinned to Spiro's dressing room mirror. "Midnight, table 7, come alone or Delia dies." Hastings clenched his fists. "It's a trap!" "Or a confession," Poirot said. "She wants the stage one last time." At 11 a.m., the casino was evacuated, staff, press, constables. Only Poirot, Japp, Hastings, and Delia remained. The gaming floor was lit by a single spotlight on table 7. The roulette wheel stood centre stage, draped in black velvet. Poirot placed the 7th die on 0. The curtain rises. At 11:55 the lights flickered. The gramophone in the projection booth crackled to life. Spiro's voice, hypnotic, intimate. "You will see the ghost. You will believe." The spotlight died. When it flared again, Spiro stood at table 7 in white silk, face veiled, a revolver in one hand, Delia's wrist in the other. "Stay back," she shouted. "One step and she joins her father." Delia, gagged with a scarf, eyes wide, was forced to kneel. Poirot raised his hands. "Madame, the game is finished. The evidence is safe. The casino is safe. Let the child go." Spiro's laugh was broken glass. "Child, she is 30 and heir to everything I was denied. Carver promised me Monte Carlo, a new life, then left me with a bastard and a music hall contract." She ripped Delia's gag free. "Tell them, daughter. Tell them how he ruined us." Delia's voice was steady. "He tried to make it right. The codicil—" "Lies!" Spiro pressed the revolver to Delia's temple. "He changed it the day he died. Because of you." Poirot stepped forward. "Because he loved her. As he loved you once. The photograph in the tin box. Petrograd, 1917. You were happy." Spiro faltered. "We were starving. The revolution took everything. He promised. He kept his promise," Poirot said softly. "The trust is Delia's, but the casino is bankrupt. You burn it. You burn her future. Let her go, and you walk free. The curare is gone. No jury will convict on suggestion alone." Spiro's hand trembled. "You lie." Poirot produced the empty vial. "Destroyed by you. The dice are clean. The film is in the Yard's vault. You have nothing left to lose." He took another step. "Except your daughter." Spiro looked at Delia, at the child's shoe in her pocket, at the scarab dice on the table. Her arm dropped. Japp moved like lightning, disarming her. Hastings caught Delia as she swayed. Spiro sank to her knees, veil falling away. "I only wanted him to suffer as I suffered." Poirot knelt beside her. "He suffered, madame. In the 90 seconds before death, he knew. The 7th die was in his pocket, his apology to you both." He opened the die. Inside, the final frame of celluloid. Carver, alone, writing on the back of the Petrograd photograph. "Forgive me, Olga. Protect our daughter." Spiro stared, then crumpled, sobbing. At 12:15, the casino was secured. Spiro was led away in cuffs. Delia stood at table 7, tracing the chalk outline of her father's body. Poirot placed the child's shoe beside it. "The house is yours, mademoiselle, debts and all." Delia smiled through tears. "I'll sell it. Build something honest." From the projection booth, the gramophone needle lifted. Silence fell. Chapter 9. The Final Spin. The Ivory Casino's gaming floor had been transformed into a courtroom of velvet and gilt. At 10:00 a.m., on 25th of October 1936, the coroner's inquest was in full session. Benches borrowed from the Old Bailey lined the roulette tables. The press gallery overflowed with reporters scribbling in shorthand. A Pathé newsreel camera whirred from the balcony. Above the cashier cage, a Union Jack hung limp in the airless heat. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre of the roulette, wheel, now mounted on a dais where the croupier's chair had once been. The wheel itself was bare, save for one object, the seventh die, cracked open, its celluloid strip coiled like a serpent beside the scarabiner dice. Around it in a semicircle sat the accused Madame Olga Spiro in prison grey, Lady Evelyn Carver in black lace, Victor Lang in a crumpled suit, and Delia Frost in the plain dress of a mourner. The coroner, a thin man with a voice like a cracked bell, addressed the room. "We are here to determine the cause of death of Sir Reginald Carver. Mr. Poirot, you have the floor." Poirot bowed. "Merci, monsieur. The cause is curare poisoning. The method is the poisoned die. The motive is a trust worth £500,000. But the truth," he spun the wheel gently, "is in the final spin." He placed the 6 scarab dice in the bowl. They rattled, settled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. A straight. "The perfect roll," Poirot said. Sir Reginald's superstition. He believed in the straight. But one die was false. He lifted the poisoned die. Number 4. Crimson wax seal. Pinprick glinting. This die was prepared by Madame Spiro. The curare was hers. The wax was sealed by Mademoiselle Frost, innocently. The substitution was attempted by Lady Evelyn at 11:45. The distraction was created by Mr. Lang at 12:01. The insurance, the ghost at 2 gashed, was Spiro's encore. Lady Evelyn rose, voice dripping venom. "Lies! The codicil is invalid. Hastings signed a betting slip." Poirot produced the codicil from his waistcoat. Witnessed by Captain Hastings and Dr. Hawthorne at 11:15 p.m. on Carver's personal stationery. Filed with his solicitor at 9 a.m. yesterday. You knew by 11 jours, madame. Lang showed you the draft. You had 1 hour to act. Lang whimpered. "I only wanted the trust, which you would control." Poirot cut in. "But the codicil names Delia Solaire. You forged the suicide note to invalidate it. Left-handed slope. Spiro's dictation. Your hand." He turned to Spiro. "You returned last night to plant the poisoned die again. Why?" Spiro's eyes were dead. "To make it look like accident. The dummy would roll. The poison found in the shaker. The trust would divide. I would be free." Poirot shook his head. "You would be hanged. The celluloid strip shows you placing the die at 11:45. The sound tape records your whisper to Evelyn. The wax bears your emerald dust. The curare vial, purchased in Soho 14th of October, is empty, destroyed by you, but the film remains." He held up the strip. Frames flickered in the spotlight. Spiro preparing the die. Lang waiting the wheel. Evelyn sealing wax. Delia writing the slate. "Carver's camera never stopped," Poirot said. "The 7th die was in his pocket, his insurance. He knew one of you would search the body." Delia spoke for the first time, voice steady. "He told me at 11:12, said the trust was my birthright. Then he went to the tables. I tried to warn him. With the shoe, the slate. I thought the ghost would scare him away." Poirot's eyes softened. "You are the only innocent, mademoiselle. Your crime was love." The coroner cleared his throat. The jury will deliberate. But first, Mr. Poirot, the final piece?" Poirot smiled. "The house always wins, monsieur, but tonight the house is bankrupt." He spun the wheel. The 6 dice rattled, bounced, settled on 0. Impossible. The crowd gasped. Poirot lifted the velvet drape beneath the wheel. A hidden electromagnet, Lang's device, still hummed, triggered by a pocket watch in his confiscated coat. "The ghost's last trick," Poirot said. "Lang rigged the wheel to land on 0 at midnight. Symbolic. The house wins, but the house is closed." He turned to the accused. "Madame Spiro, murder by curare. Lady Evelyn, conspiracy to murder. Victor Lang, fraud and accessory. Delia Frost, released without charge." The jury filed out. At 10:30 a.m., the verdict was read: death by poisoning, willful murder by persons unknown. The accused were remanded for trial. Delia remained at the wheel, tracing the scarab on the 7th die. Poirot placed the child's shoe beside it. "The house is yours, mademoiselle, debts and all." She smiled through tears. "I'll sell it, build a school, for girls like me." At 11:04 a.m., the casino was locked. The chandeliers were draped in dust sheets. The roulette wheel was crated for evidence. Poirot, Hastings and Japp stood on the pavement as the removal men carried out the tables. Hastings sighed. "Jolly good show, Poirot. But the ghost, Spiro's laugh, the dice dropping, was that all Lang? No, observe." Poirot pointed to the ventilation grill. A final ivory die dropped, click, 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 landing on the threshold. It showed 1 pip. Poirot picked it up. Inside, a rolled slip. "The house always wins." R.C. Hastings stared. "Carver's ghost?" Poirot smiled. "Or the casino's last laugh? The 7th die was never the only one." From the empty gaming floor came a woman's laugh. Low, theatrical, fading into silence. Chapter 10. The house pays its debts. The Ivory Casino was dead, but it refused to lie down. At 8 a.m. on 26 October 1936, the removal vans had gone, the chandeliers were crated, the roulette wheel was boxed and labelled Exhibit A. Yet the building itself seemed to breathe. Dusty exhalations through the ventilation grills, the faint clatter of ivory on mahogany, the echo of a woman's laugh that no living throat had uttered. Hercule Poirot stood alone on the gaming floor, the 7th die in his gloved hand. The chalk outline of Sir Reginald Carver's body had been washed away, but the green baize of Table 7 still bore a darker stain, like a bruise that would not fade. Captain Hastings burst through the service door, pink and agitated. "Poirot! The Yard's released Delia. She's outside with the solicitor, signing papers. The casino's hers, lock, stock, and bankruptcy. But there's something else." He held up a telegram. Poirot read aloud. Poirot's moustaches twitched. "The house keeps one last secret." They descended to the office. The safe door hung open, combination lock spinning. Inside, nothing but a single ivory die, unmarked, resting on a scrap of palladium notepaper. Poirot unfolded the note. In Spiro's spidery copperplate, Hastings paled. "It's a trap!" "Or a confession," Poirot said. "The roof, where the ghost first appeared." At 5:45 a.m., the sky over London was the colour of wet ash. Poirot climbed the iron staircase to the casino's flat roof, where the Egyptian motif continued in faded friezes of scarabs and lotus columns. The Thames lay below, sluggish and indifferent. Madame Olga Spiro waited beside the parapet, no longer in prison grey, but in the emerald silk of her stage persona. Veil lifted, face painted white like a death mask. In one hand, a silver shaker. In the other, a revolver. Behind her, bound to a ventilation stack, was Delia Frost, gagged, eyes wide with terror. Poirot raised his hands. "Madam, the game is finished. The evidence is in the Yard's vault. The casino is sold. Let the child go." Spiro's laugh was wind through a crypt. "Child, she is 30 and heir to ashes. Carver promised me Monte Carlo, a new life, then left me with a bastard and a music hall contract. I poisoned him for it. I would poison the world." She shook the shaker. 6 ivory dice spilled onto the tarred roof, bouncing, settling, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. "The devil's roll," she said, "Carver's superstition. He believed in the straight. I gave him the beast." Poirot stepped closer. "You gave him curare, but the die was already in the shaker, placed by Lady Evelyn at 11:45. Your plan was contingency." Spiro's eyes blazed. Contingency is victory. The ghost at Touche would have driven him to suicide with the same die. The house always wins. She levelled the revolver at Delia. "One bullet. The trust dies with her. The casino burns tonight. Paraffin is cheap. You cannot stop me." Poirot's voice was calm. "You are wrong, madame. The house has already paid its debt." He reached into his pocket, produced the 7th die, the unmarked one from the safe. He unscrewed it. Inside, not celluloid, but a tiny brass key. "The key to the casino's master safe," Poirot said, "hidden by Carver in the 7th die. The safe contains not money, but documents. His confession, recorded on copper wire, naming you all. He knew you would come for it." Spiro's hand trembled. "Lies." Poirot tossed the key. It arced, glinted, landed at her feet. "Open the safe yourself. The wire is dated 23 October, 11 p.m. He knew he would die." Spiro hesitated, then lunged for the key. In that instant, Poirot moved, faster than his small frame suggested, snatching the revolver from her slackened grip. Hastings and Japp burst from the stairwell, constables behind them. Spiro screamed, clawing at Poirot. "You stole my life!" Poirot held her at arm's length. "No, madam, you stole your daughter's." He nodded to Japp. The constables freed Delia. At 6:15 a.m. they descended to the office. The master safe, hidden behind the portrait of Carver in boxing pose, opened with the brass key. Inside, a magnetophone reel, labelled in Carver's hand. "My last will, play in full." Poirot threaded the reel. Carver's voice, faint but clear, filled the room. "If you hear this, I am dead. The house is rotten. Spiro poisoned the die. Evelyn substituted it. Lang rigged the distractions. Delia tried to warn me. I changed the codicil to protect her. The casino is bankrupt. Sell it, Delia. Build something honest. Forgive them. They are lost. I was too." The reel clicked to silence. Delia wept. Spiro, cuffed, stared at the floor. At 7 a.m., the casino was sealed. The press waited outside, flashbulbs popping. Poirot addressed them from the steps. "The Ivory Casino is closed. Sir Reginald Carver was murdered by curare on a poisoned die. The conspirators, Madame Olga Spiro, Lady Evelyn Carver, Victor Lang, will stand trial. Delia Frost, the rightful heir, will sell the property. The house has paid its debts." A reporter shouted, "What about the ghost?" Poirot smiled. "The ghost was greed, monsieur, and greed is laid to rest." At 8 a.m., Delia signed the sale papers in the solicitor's office. The casino sold for $50,000. Debts swallowed the rest. She kept only one thing, the child's shoe. Poirot, Hastings and Japp watched from the pavement as the wrecking balls arrived. Hastings sighed. "Jolly good end, Poirot. But the dice dropping, the laugh, was that all?" Poirot opened his hand. The 7th die was gone. In its place, a single ivory pip, painted crimson. "The house always wins," he said softly, "but sometimes it loses with style." From the ruins came a final sound. A woman's laugh, low, theatrical, fading into the clang of the wrecking ball.